Welcome to the first video of 2022 on the Dispatch YouTube channel. We are very thankful for everybody watching, and without further ado, let's get into this video on two players and two teams in the NBA that are in for a rough year in 2022. First up on this list is Julius Randle. Now, Randle shocked the entire NBA with his season in the 2020-21 NBA season. He went into the year seen as trade bait with the Knicks drafting Uppbeat, and it really seemed like he could be on his way out, and around the league was seen as an empty stats player. But he had one of the biggest jumps out of any NBA player I've seen, and he made all NBA second team, made an all-star, and led the Knicks miraculously to the playoffs. He also shot a very impressive 40% from three, and up to that point he was barely at 30%. But with that being said, I think almost all NBA fans know how impressive his last season was with the Knicks, but going into this season he had much bigger expectations, and so did the Knicks as a whole, adding players such as Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, another jump being expected out of RJ Barrett, and it hasn't gone that way. Randle, some of his tendencies from his first year with the Knicks, where it seemed like he was going to be traded after that first year because he was playing that poorly. Some of those tendencies have returned, especially his turnovers, over dribbling, and his three-point shot has not been there. He's returned to being a poor three-point shooter, not as poor as he used to be, but he's still shooting in the low 30s. But in the case of Randle, he was always able to put up numbers in his career. Even in his first year with the Knicks, his counting stats, his points and rebounds were good. He averaged almost 20 and 10 a game, and this year he's averaging 19 and 10 with a decent amount of assists as well. But when you watch the games, he just holds the ball for so long. He over dribbles a lot, and when you see the Knicks without him, I mean, he's still their best player, but the ball just moves around so much more. And what was so impressive with Randle's season last year is that he was able to put up those numbers he's always been able to put up. This time actually help his team win games while putting up even better numbers. I mean, he made an all-NBA second team last year. His three-point shooting was remarkable, and I just don't know if he's ever going to reach that height again in his NBA career. With that being said, though, I still think he can be a good player. He is very hard to play with, but I think his best year was in the past, and I don't think he'll be able to replicate that. Next on the list is Michael Porter Jr. of the Nuggets, who got himself a $200 million extension. A lot of that being based off his potential. He did have a really nice season, especially when Jamal Murray went down for the Nuggets, stepping up as that number 2 option next to Nikola Jokic, but injuries have plagued him ever since high school, and they look like they're still there. That back problem, he still has it, and he is now most likely out for the year due to a back problem again, and he has really failed to stay healthy overall. And we all know he is an immensely talented player, a 6'10 forward who can shoot really, really well. But before this season, before his injury where he went down and most likely shut down for the season, he was really struggling, averaging 9.9 points on 35-20, shooting from the field and from three. So up to that point, he was really struggling. You gotta think that back injury had somewhat been messing with him before they shut him down, and obviously that was the reason he fell in the 2018 draft, because of the injury concerns. This is nothing new with Michael Porter Jr. He tore his ACL in college, and we all know about his talent. He really looked great last year when Jamal Murray went down. He averaged over 20 a game, 7 rebounds. I mean, he was very, very efficient too. He was shooting over 50% from the field, and he's also a great three-point shooter. But I just don't know if he'll ever be able to stay healthy in his NBA career. And that contract for the Nuggets really might be tough have on their books for the next few years, but we gotta hope he can find a way to stay healthy finally, consistently. He was pretty healthy last year, but obviously this back injury has seriously plagued him this season, and gotta hope he can get healthy for next year. Now, third on this list is a combination of a player and a team, and that is the Philadelphia 76ers and Tobias Harris. Now, specifically Tobias Harris, I would have said, but he's probably enjoying that contract the Sixers gave him, which he probably shouldn't have gotten, and puts the Sixers in a tough spot because they couldn't afford to lose him, but now they're going to be paying him over $40 million a year. $40 million a year to a player who's never made an all-star team and is not known as a great playoff performer. And him and the Sixers are in the spot. Him because I feel he might get traded eventually. They don't have a lot of leeway. And the Sixers are on here because they gave him the contract. And we all know about the Ben Simmons situation currently going on in Philadelphia. They're in a really tough position, and his value is definitely not as high as it used to be. So for Philadelphia and Tobias Harris, 2022 is going to be in a rough year. At one point, Philly looked like they could maybe run the East for the next few years when they had J.J. Redick, Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris, and some really good depth. They do have a nice young guard in Tyrese Maxey. Matisse Thybulle's decent. Obviously, we all know how great Joel Embiid is, but just kind of feels like they're stuck in the middle. Like, where do they really go from here? What moves can they really make while they're waiting for the Ben Simmons situation to materialize? Lastly on this list is the Indiana Pacers, and I won't speak too much on them or go too in depth since I made a separate video on them, which you should definitely check out. But this is an update. Pretty much their owner says, we're not going into a rebuild. He said that on December 17th. And I think this is just short-sighted and not looking long-term for the franchise's future whatsoever at all. And they've been stuck in the middle for a while. And it just really isn't smart. They don't have the pieces to seriously contend. They do have talent on their roster, but they've had talent on the roster for a while, and they just haven't been able to stay healthy or consistently win games. They've had the same core of Sabonis, Turner, Malcolm Brogdon now for a few years, for a while. I mean, they've had additions like Chris Duarte and Karis LeVert, which are good players, but they're not players that will change the course of your franchise. And I just think their ceiling is not that high at all as a team, and they should tear it all down, or almost all of it down, and almost every player on that roster should be available for trade. They shouldn't be looking to barely make the playoffs this year. They should be looking to get high draft picks.